Heated gloves or heated grips? Which are better? Which get hotter? And which one should you use? Stick around and I'll tell you. So as you can probably hear, we're coming into winter, which means icy mornings, the nights draw in, and the weather's just a bit, well, shit. So most bikes get tucked away in the garage under a cover and don't get seen again until April next year. You stick the trickle charger on and that's it. Some of us aren't fortunate enough to have that. Before this whole C word, I was commuting every single day of the year, whether it be rain, sleet, snow, ice, the works. So I found out quite quickly that heated grips weren't enough for me. Now there'll be other people out there that commute on their bikes, they'll use your bike for work as well, and there'll be others that just like taking the bike out for a weekend black when the weather's not absolutely pissing it down. That's how cold it is in here. I hate winter. So, two ends of the spectrum. You've got heated grips and heated gloves. Now, let's start with heated grips. So first of all, heated grips are becoming quite common. They're offered as they're standard on a lot of new bikes nowadays. They're an optional extra on a lot of new bikes, and you can get them quite cheap from most places like Sports Bike Shop or your local motorcycle accessory store. So they're really accessible. You stick them on the bike and they're always there. It's really convenient. These work really well if it's just like you've gone out for a ride and on the way home it's just getting a little bit cold on your hands. But as I mentioned, when I'm leaving at 6 AM and it's -3 or -5, heated grips don't do it. They do get really hot, which I'll show you with this. This is bloody expensive at the moment, by the way. Just literally a temperature gauge. It's so expensive because everyone's having to do that whole stuff to see if you've got the corona. But the problem with them is they only work on the inside of your hands, which is normally not the cold part. The cold part is the bit that's facing the wind, which is where heated gloves come in. I've had these for a couple of years. These are a Gerbing XR-12 glove, and I've said in my last couple of videos that I'm going to do a review on them. You're not probably bored of hearing me say that I'm going to do a review on them. I'll stick a card up here to those latest videos. But essentially what a heated glove is it has heated elements that go along the back of your fingers and down the side. So the bit that you're not actually getting heat to is the palm, but when the rest of your hand is covered in heating elements, you don't need to worry about the palm because that's not cold. That's not the bit that's getting the wind blast and the wind chill. Now, the problem with heated gloves is they're more expensive, for one. So my bike came with heated grips. They were a bit pants. They were the Yamaha ones. They're probably better nowadays, but mine were just... My bike's only 3 years old, but they were a bit pants. I don't know whether depending on the manufacturer, some are better, some are worse, but they just weren't hot enough for me. Whereas I've now got the Oxford heated grips. They come in various different things. I think I've got the premium ones, and they were about £50–55 in the UK. I'll put a picture here. So they're really good. They literally just replace your old grips. If you look at a pair of these, I think the cheapest you can find a good pair of full heated gloves is around the £130 mark. Now they go up to £200–300. I think these are about £160. These have been superseded by another pair, which are the XRs, I think they are. I'll put another picture here this time. They've been superseded, but they're essentially the same glove. They're just like the newer ones just have buttons on here to turn them on and things like that. The way these work is you'll see here, there's a cable that comes out of them. Now that can go into two things. You either have a lead which runs through your jacket and comes out the sleeves, which I'll show you in a second, or you get the batteries. Now the batteries fit in this pocket here, and then you plug the lead into the battery and they last for about an hour depending what setting you're on, which works really well if you're just commuting into work. Charge the batteries up, they last until you get to work, and sometimes, depending if you don't have to commute that far, they will last on the way back as well. When these were relatively new, the battery technology was still quite bulky for this kind of thing. To have that kind of power in a battery was quite bulky. Having the batteries in these just meant they were weighted and not great, I'll be honest. So that's why I had the batteries and I returned them. So they are more hassle, yes, but if you are, my commute's about 45 minutes, so for me to plug myself in is no hassle, it's worth it. If you're doing 10 minutes, don't bother, you could probably get away with heated grips. But the thing I've found is once we get to that point of the year where it's getting a bit chilly, all I do is I put the wire in my jacket, it stays in my jacket and it's just there all the time. So that will stay there until I take my thermal lining out in the summer and I take the wire out with the thermal lining. First of all, the comfort. I think these are a medium. My hands are I've got tiny hands basically, but these are a medium. So they come up like most winter gloves, but they're completely like dexterous. There's no issue with moving around in them. You can still get to your indicators and things like that. But these are knocking on 3 years old now. I bought these after my first winter on the bike. I bought these because I cannot do it anymore. Now, as you can see, they still look completely fine. This is obviously just a Velcro strap that goes around the middle. You've got another Velcro strap here so you can tighten up the cuff. Some of the leather inside is starting to fray a bit, but all in all, considering they're 3 years old, I think they've done quite well. If you don't want to spend this kind of money, but you're finding heated grips aren't enough, I would show you these, but they're actually locked in my girlfriend's bike, so I can't get them out. But what you can get is inner gloves. Now, these are the ones I bought for my girlfriend are about £65, and they're like a thermal type inner glove, and they go underneath your full glove. So if you've got big wintry gloves like this anyway, that they'll need to be quite big. If they're a snug fit, you're not going to get another pair of gloves underneath. But it's like wearing a thin pair of thermal gloves underneath, and they also have a lead to plug into. Now, if you're doing more than half an hour on the bike, get them, because she's got quite bad circulation in her hands, as have I. She had heated grips. Now, the Oxford heated grips go really hot, like to the point where if you take your glove off and put your hand on them when they're on the hottest setting, you could burn yourself. But they're just not hot enough because it's the top of your hand that's getting cold. It's not the bottom. So heated grips work perfectly for if you're doing half an hour commute or a quick ride or something on the way home. But when it's a longer ride or you're doing a tour, you need something that's actually going to heat the whole hand. She's been using her inner gloves since about 2 months after she passed the test, because she was so cold and she could not feel her hands. We got her these gloves and she's never complained since. She gets back, hands are warm. Now, unlike these, the inner gloves don't have any settings. They're just on or off. And what they do is when you plug them in, they gently warm up. So here we have, this is just my Halvarson's jacket. As you can see, looking at it there, you cannot tell that there are wires coming out of it. Because if you look at the cuff, you'll see a small wire just there. Now the idea behind that is when you put your glove on, you literally connect these two together like that. Easy, you can see I did it with one hand. So you do that with both hands. If I open up my jacket, you can still see mud from where I went green laning. So normally you wouldn't see these. These are the two wires that come out of the sleeves. Normally you wouldn't see that because I'll have my thermal lining in and these would go between the two, and you cannot feel these once the thermal lining is in. And to be fair, even without the thermal lining, you cannot really feel them. Now I've got a zip here, which is purely to put the armour in for the shoulder pads and the elbow pads. So you go up and you can go in that way. Just undoing that brings me that. Now this is the controller. So again, I think the newer ones have this button on the actual glove itself. So you won't have this, you'll just have the wire that comes down, plugs into your bike. But this is where everything comes down, and then this just comes out on your left hand side or right hand side, depending where you put the connector to the bike, and then that plugs into the bike, which I'll show you quickly now. So I've just got this bit here, which is just a plug, and that can pop off, and it gives you and it gives you the connector there. My bike's a state, I really need to clean it. So that stays there, it's always there. So with these gloves, you get 4 settings. You get a blue setting, a green setting, an orange, and then a red. When you get them out of the box, you only get the blue and the green, which is like a low heat and a medium heat. And then you get the hot and the extra hot, which is the orange and the red. Now, the reason for that is with these, on hot and extra hot, they do get incredibly warm. Essentially, to get to that point, you have to unlock these. So you press once for blue, you press twice for green, and then to get to the orange, you have to hold for 10 seconds and it'll unlock the orange, and then you cannot relock it. Now, I think that's purely a legal kind of thing. If you unlock the red one, for example, which is the highest setting, and it burns your hand, for example, there's a warning in the manual that can happen if you've got sensitive skin or anything like that. I've used the red one. It doesn't burn your hands, it just gets really, really warm. So that's essentially that. That plugs into the bike and it stays there. And then once I'm not using it, it just tucks back in there. I'll do the zip up. You wouldn't know you're wearing it. Then these, as before, they literally just stay between the Velcro of my jacket. Right, let's go and speak about the heated grips. So these are my Oxford heated grips. I think these are the Touring Pro version, something like that. And this is the controller. So this just gets mounted to your bike, and you've got the 30%, 40, 50, 75 and 100, and literally just an on and off. This comes with a power saving mode, so if I leave this on, after 30 seconds to a minute, the battery saving mode will start flashing it to turn the grips off if the engine's not running, which is a really useful feature. Now, these do get really warm. So what we're going to do a quick test with the heat gun to see what they actually come out with. This one's going to be a little bit difficult because I've got to try and get this into the glove. But let's give the bike a quick start. So there you go, bit of a test. Again, it's completely unscientific. It's literally just, I bought one of these off Amazon, which it just does a temperature reading based on what it's looking at. I'm actually quite impressed. Both the grips and the gloves went to over 50 degrees centigrade. As you can imagine, the grips being that hot, they'll probably go hotter. I would have thought both of them will go hotter than that because it just kept climbing. But I got an arm ache, so holding that button for 5 minutes was quite painful. You've got to think the grips will have to go through, they're being chilled by the air anyway, and they've got to be hot enough to go through your current gloves. Whereas with the gloves, all of the elements are inside. I mean, this is still hot. I can feel how hot it is through there. So toasty. But the thing with these is the elements go down your fingers and around the back of your hand, which means your hands are never cold. That was the hottest setting. I very rarely use red. I use On the really, really cold days, I only ever get to the orange setting. When you're on the blue or the green setting, it doesn't feel like your hands are being heated at all. They literally just feel like you are riding along in normal temperature. When you get to the orange setting, it starts getting warm, and then you can feel your body getting warmer, which is nice. When your hands are warm, your body's warm, and vice versa. So as long as your core's warm, you'll be fine. But if your hands get cold, you cannot get warm. To summarise, if you are doing short stints commuting to work, like less than half an hour, you have the option to work from home or get another route into work when it's snowing or really icy. If you only use your bike in the summer or the shoulder months of that, stick with heated grips. They're 50, 60 pounds. They work really well, and they give you just enough heat to make it home without being in too much pain or too cold. If you are touring a lot, if you are commuting to work all year round, and if you don't mind a bit of extra faff, go for heated gloves. They've saved me so many times. Even the Cotswolds tour I did, like, I got really cold. I had my thermals on and I had everything. I was getting really cold. These things just made it enjoyable. It made riding, I was riding around thinking about where I was and enjoying my bike rather than where can I stop and get my hands around a cup of hot coffee. It was just, I wasn't even thinking about, I still thought about the coffee, but just for the addiction to the caffeine rather than the heat of it. But yeah, if you can afford it, get some of these. Like, they are outstanding, and these are old as well. They've lasted years. If you cannot afford these, but you don't mind a little bit of faff, get the Inner Gloves. I'll stick a picture on. I've probably stuck a picture on screen anyway, but if not, I'll stick another one up here. But get some Inner Gloves. They are great as well. They're not quite as good as these. They don't have the settings, but they're fantastic as well. I'm going to stick the other one on because this hand's getting cold now that this one's still warm. That's my heated gloves versus heated grips comparison. Which one should you get? That's up to you to decide. Hopefully that's given you a bit of insight into what you should be looking at. They're waterproof and they're warm anyway. So they double up as a pair of normal gloves and a pair of heated gloves. And quite frankly, other than motorbikes themselves, these are probably one of the best inventions ever. So I hope you've enjoyed it. Please leave any comments in the comment section below, and I'll see you in the next one.